Hey everybody, BoatsDon'tSink here. Some of you might know yesterday I put out a quiz in the Discords and on Global for some rulings questions based on the most recent comprehensive rules version from February, which has a couple weird things that I don't think people really knew about. But yeah, I was a little surprised with the results. I didn't intend for this to really be a lot of like difficult questions, but if we want to take a look at the scores here, um, based on at least what the website thought were people's first attempts, I know a couple of people retook it and got tens, like 100%. Um, at some point, I don't believe anyone got 100% on their first try. Um, and most people looked like they were scoring like 50 to 60%, which was a little lower than I was expecting. I was expecting like 70 to 80. Um, a couple of questions that I thought were more common knowledge were obviously not. Um, just some of the very sort of straightforward ones. Um, but I'm making this video to sort of show the answers and go over why certain things are the way they are for these rules. So I'm just gonna run through the quiz real quick. We don't need a name, whatever. So question one was about the Haruhi 1-1 vanilla alongside the treasure trigger. It attacks, triggers it as the last card of the deck, and it wants to know what order the climax goes back to hand, and you stock, and then refresh and resolve the refresh point. So what will happen here is you reveal the card from the top of your deck. It goes to the resolution zone as your trigger. You have run out of cards in your deck, so interrupt, you'll refresh, so 2 is going to be first. And then there's not a check timing for the refresh point until the end of the trigger step, so you'll resolve the entire treasure trigger first, which is going to be returning it back to hand and then stocking. Most people got this one right, so it's going to be 2, 1, 3. Most people got this. It was, yeah, not one that really trips people up. So number 2 was Otanashi attacking. So this is just another vanilla. And the defending character is Yuna. This is effectively a vanilla. It doesn't really matter what character this is. The Angel Beats player reveals a return trigger. So this is going to return the Yuna back to the Sword Art player's hand. And then the question is asking whether the Sword Art player can play the event counter opposition by the shield, which this is the anti-damage counter, and choose a character in battle. That character gets the following ability: this cannot deal damage. And it's asking whether we can choose the Otanashi. So the key part here is that it has to choose a character in battle, and once a character attacks, that is going to be right here, 7.2 attack declaration step, is going to be frontal attack, side attack. Here we go. 72151. If a frontal attack was chosen, the character facing the attacking character becomes defending, and this character is being attacked. The attacking character and the defending character are considered in battle for the duration of the attack subphase. So he is still considered in battle. And I want to say most people that did miss this one said there is a counter step, but he's not in battle. Nobody really said there's no counter step. So there is a counter step. There's always a counter step on a frontal attack, which is going to be right here. And I believe it specifies that yeah, here we go. The step in which the opponent of the turn player responds to the turn player's frontal attack. So this is always going to happen regardless of like return triggers or whatever, as long as there's a frontal. And Otanashi is in battle, as we see at 72151. So yes, you can play it. Look at that. Number 3 is, this is one that people missed. a pretty good bit. Catcher Stance Kanon Matsuura is the like field encore for Love Live Sunshine. And then a wonderful thing. This is basically a 2K vanilla. I would have put an actual vanilla here, but I actually forgot that Winged Slayer existed, so the only minus power card I could think of was Risei and Kanzeon. So yeah, this card's giving minus 2,000 to all the Love Live Sunshine players' characters, all 2 of them. And since they hit 0 power, they go to the waiting room. I want to say the part that tripped people up here was probably at the encore step, reversed characters go to the waiting room one at a time. However, characters with insufficient power actually resolve as a rule action. So right here, 9-5, it is a check type rule action. So this is one of the ones that uses a check timing. It's not an interrupt like leveling or refreshing. So what'll happen is the Risei will use her effect, they'll go to 0 power, and then since you're going back to the Persona player's play timing, before they get a play timing, they'll have to do a check timing. That's where it's going to see the 0 power on these characters. And check type rule actions you can see up here. 9-1-2-2-1, when multiple check type rule actions are to be executed simultaneously, all of them are executed simultaneously. So since there's 2 characters at 0 power, they're both going to go to waiting room at the same time. Most people said they're put one at a time. Very few people said Kanon first because lower power. That one, I think, was obvious enough that it was not the correct answer. Now, don't let it trip you up. Someone was asking me in a message. They are put in at the same time. You can still encore them if you wanted to like pay 3 encore. They would just both go, both of their auto encore abilities would activate, and then you could choose to resolve those, just like you would anytime multiple auto abilities activate at the same check timing. So next we have the their child Yui question. This one and the next one, a large number of people missed. They were not the most missed questions, but they were probably like second and third most missed. So this was probably the second most missed question. So this one is strange, and the correct answer to it has changed a couple times in the past, seemingly just based on how Bushiroad's feeling at the time. However, as of February, when Cardcaptor Sakura came out, which was a set that finally had actual references to names that did not have like Japanese card names, since it's an English exclusive set, they don't have like the Japanese name in parentheses to check for. The comprehensive rules added a section on how to handle names like that, or checking for names like that versus checking for names with Japanese in them. So it's going to be up here, this huge red block. 2121 shows like if you have English parentheses Japanese. This card, unfortunately, their child Yui, being as old as it is, does not actually have Japanese text printed on it. So it's going to use 2122 until further notice, at least. I think this is the question, or this is one of the things that's most likely to change in the future again, just based on the fact that it's largely unintentional and just works this way because it's what the rules say and not for any logical reason. For those that are unfamiliar, the Japanese card here shows the Kirito and Asuna using katakana names, whereas Asuna cards commonly, you can see here, this right here that my mouse is circling is Asuna in katakana. It's her in-game name. Whereas on this card, these 3 kanji right here, that is Asuna's like real life name. They're both Asuna, they're just written differently. Cards that check for her in-game name cannot grab cards with this name in Japanese. However, since this card's older, it doesn't check for Japanese name. We're using this. This refers to a portion of a card's English card name, where there's a space before and a space or a colon after whatever it's checking for. So this does fit. It does have a space before and a space or a colon after, and it is Asuna, which is what we're checking for. So you can't actually give power to this. Most people just said time to get serious Kirito and long-awaited Promise Day Asuna. However, it can also choose SAO Survivor, at least for the time being. There's not many cards that this is really relevant for, but there's a few. This card just straight up is a Kazuto, it's not even a Kirito, so I hope nobody put that. Next page. Alright, so this one's based on the same ruling. The same 2122. Striped Bikini Ren. Just checks for Ren, no Japanese text. Most people probably got this right anyway because they were unfamiliar with linkage. Heat Haze has Ren in name. Punkish has Len in name, so it's 45, 5,000, 55, and this gives 1,000 during your turn. So that is a 6,500. That is the correct answer. It does not gain power from linkage. Some people that probably got tripped up on this said it does gain 500 from linkage, because these first two katakana right here are Ren, and this is what the Japanese card checks for. So in Japanese, this card does actually count as a Ren card for Project Diva decks. However, it has Ren in it, nowhere down here, with a space before and space or colon after. So, we don't get power from it here. Next question, we have the Great Performance versus Back Row Attacker. So this is, if it's in middle position of center stage, not reversed, your opponent frontal attacks this card instead, whenever they would attack. So that's a replacement effect. Nozomi, her first ability here is the one we're looking at. If this card would attack, you may instead choose a character on your opponent's backstage and have this card frontal attack with the chosen character as the defending character. That's also a replacement attack, or replacement effect, I'm sorry. Replacing the target of her attack, and this replaces the target of her attack. So which one has priority? Very few people said that it must be a frontal against Sarara because of Nozomi's climax combo effect. So it's kind of dumb anyway. It must be frontal. This is a May effect. You don't actually have to do this at all. But yeah, that one's just wrong. The real question is whether Naotsugu eats the attack or the player gets to choose. Currently, in Japanese, which potentially might have thrown some people off, you have to attack the Naotsugu. They changed the ordering so that turn player's effect always replaces first. So her attack target gets replaced to the backstage, and then it gets replaced to the Naotsugu. However, in English still, it works how it used to in Japanese. Which is going to be, let me just control, oh goodness, where's my control F? Control F, there we go. Replacement. Replacement effects. There we go. So 8.10.2 right here. If multiple replacement effects are triggered simultaneously by the same event, which in this case is Nozomi attacking, the player that receives the consequence of those effects decides which effects are applied first. If what receives the consequence is a card or an ability, which in this case it is a card, it is the Nozomi, or you could look at it as an action during the game, the attack. Either way, the player executing the action or the master of the card that applies the action decides. So in this case, since the player controlling the Nozomi is the master of what's happening here, player B will get to choose the order. So they can either choose to resolve Naotsugu first and then Nozomi in order to attack the backstage, or they can resolve Nozomi first, Naotsugu second, and get stuck attacking Naotsugu. So they can choose. Important knowledge with Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai coming out next month, because Futaba is going to be a problem. Probably not a problem, but it's a good card. And you might want to know how to play around Great Performance a little bit. So this question, player A has Megumin. This is the Clock Kick Deal 4 combo from Konosuba Set 1. Player B has Full of Vigor Yui on stage. We only care about the third effect here. During your opponent's turn, when the damage you received is not cancelled, if this is in your center stage, look at top card, put it on top or bottom, or I'm sorry, top or into waiting room. I can't read. Play the climax, pay the cost. This is stand, whatever. You deal 4, the 4 sticks. You choose the Yui, put it into clock, rest this card. Do they get to look at the top card of deck for Yui? So Yui does see the 4 damage go through. So her ability does trigger. it does trigger, and then at the end of Megumin's effect, after she rests and the Yui is sent to clock, it will resolve. So during your opponent's turn, when the damage you received is not cancelled, that is called the like ability trigger or activation condition. The rulebook refers to it as both. That is going to be back here at 81121. When condition effect, or at the beginning of phase or step effect, we're doing a condition in this place. If damage you received is not cancelled, that is the activation condition. For automatic abilities, when the activation condition is fulfilled, the ability enters a standby condition, and then it'll resolve at the check timing. So when we go to check the rest of the effect, if this card is in your center stage, it is no longer in your center stage, it's in the clock. So you cannot use Yui, since she is required to still be on the center stage. This question is basically the same, except instead of Yui, we have Futaba. Futaba is during your opponent's turn when damage you received is not cancelled. Look at the top card of your deck, put it on top of deck or into waiting room. She does not require to be in center stage. So what will happen here is the 4 damage will go through, she'll go to, her ability will trigger, she'll go to clock, Megumin will rest, you'll go to check timing, and then you'll get to do it, because the rest of the effect will resolve, and there's no like condition that you're not meeting here. So you can use Futaba's effect. Alright, next question is the seizure of private property question. This one, most people got right. I don't know if people just looked up the order and it was really easy to find, or if people actually know this. But yeah, so this is basically, you have seizure of private property, 4 cards in deck, your overhand size, and it's end of turn. And you have a climax in play. What order do you do everything in? This one's pretty easy to just look up. If you go to, let's see, section 6 is going to have the end phase right here. So the first thing you do is at end of turn effects. So that's going to be seizure of private property. It says, and at the end of the turn, your opponent puts the same number of cards from the top of his or her deck into the stock. 7 in this case. You only have 4 cards in deck, so you're going to put the 4 in. Then you're going to have no cards in deck. So obviously you can't put 3 in yet, because you don't have a deck. You can't resolve refresh penalty yet, because you've not refreshed your deck. So 3 has to be next. You're refreshing your deck. So 1, 3. So this narrows us down to 2 choices. After you refresh your deck, you'll finish the current effect. I think most people just know this. Refresh penalty uses a check timing, so it's not going to interrupt an effect. You'll move the remaining 3 cards. So we have 1, 3, 2, and then 4. Right here, there's a check timing is triggered after you do these effects. So that's when you'll resolve refresh penalty. So we have 1, 3, 2, 4, which actually locks us into this answer right here. So maybe people don't know which order you put a climax to waiting room, or discard a card. You do discard the card to go back down to hand size first. Then you put your climax into the waiting room. So that's the answer on that one. And the last question here was the most missed question by a pretty good bit. Somewhere around 90% of people missed this question. So player A plays Luminosity Eternal Ruler from hand to stage, uses the effect to place Kairi Shishigo from hand to stage. So this card is the 3/2 Jean from Apocrypha. When this is placed on stage from hand, draw up to 1 card, choose a cost 1 or lower, put it on any position of your stage. The card replacing is Kairi. He has a bond effect. Question is, can we use the bond? I haven't actually looked if it says anything about bond. Yeah, so here we go. It actually says this on the card too. When this card is played and placed on stage, and over here it says, may return a specified character from his or waiting to the hand upon paying a cost when that card is placed on the stage by playing it. By playing is the key part here. So if we go back up to playing and resolving cards and abilities, playing, the rules are not super good about defining playing. Right here, a play timing, playing and resolving. Here we go. A player plays a card or an ability as follows. So this is how you play a card. You designate an ability or a card in your hand. So in this case, you would have to choose the Kyrie from your hand. If it's a card, it's allowed to be played, and you reveal it if you meet the color and level requirement. And then you go through choosing a stage position, paying the cost if it has a cost that needs to be paid, such as like a level 2 with 1 cost, you'd have to pay a stock for it. And then it is played to that stage position. Using an effect like this does not count as playing, so you aren't actually able to bond off of that. So no, we cannot use it. And boom. So there we go. In 19 minutes, which was a little longer than most of you took, just because I was going through and explaining everything, we have a 10 out of 10. So, obviously I made the quiz, but yeah, hopefully this explained a little bit about some of the rulings that you may not have known before, and might have been very confused as to why you missed some of these questions. And like I said when I was going through, the ones about old cards that don't reference Japanese names, I think is possible to change in the future, just because I don't think that's intentional. In the past, they have actually ruled that they do what the Japanese cards do, and check for the Japanese name. However, right now, between this and up here at 1311, if there's any conflict between the card text of English edition cards and Japanese edition cards, the card text of the respective language will take precedence. So if there's a difference, and you're using the English card takes precedence, which in this case does not check for a Japanese name. So yeah, thank you everyone that took it. Hopefully you've learned a little bit, even if you only missed 1 or 2 questions. And I might have another one of these at some point in the future. So yeah, thank you guys.